Some parts of today's video have been dubbed due to some technical issues when filming. Hopefully this should not hinder your viewing pleasure. So here we are at the NEC finally for the classic car show. I didn't actually think I was going to get here. I was expecting to be working. I found out late yesterday that I was not going to be working, so I booked my ticket at 11:30 last night, and here we are. Was generally quite a good journey until we got to junction 7, the one before the NEC, and then it took us over an hour to get in car park. It's really busy here today, and every car park we then came to seemed to be full, so we kept getting waved on to the next one, but we're finally here, and despite an hour sat in traffic, the temperature needle stayed bang in the middle on them again, so I'm quite happy. So I'm going to go probably have to find a bus now, and we'll pick this up again a little bit later. So as you can imagine, it's incredibly busy in here today, but one of the first stands I stumbled on is the Gccg Club stand. Some really interesting cars, quite a diverse range of vehicles as well. So something I haven't seen for years is this Renault Fuego GTS. Really can't remember the last time I saw one of those. It was Renault's sort of mid to large size coupe in the 80s. Another car that I'm really fond of, Peugeot 106 Rally in Phase 1 guys as well. These have the crazy 1300cc engine that revved I think to about 7,000 RPM. Close ratio gearing, on its original steel wheels as well. Obviously a lot of them did get modified maybe 20 years or so ago, but now they're actually quite valuable. Can't remember how many colours these were available in, but I'm pretty sure they're in black, white and red. I know the Phase 2s, I think they did a blue as well. I'm not sure about the Phase 1s. Moving along, another car I've never seen before actually in the metal, but I've always been keen to see, is the Honda S660. Actually fits into K-car regulation and not sold here in the UK. So being a K-car, I think it's up to 660cc's, it's turbocharged, but there are strict regulations on both capacity, power output and dimensions with these cars. So the good thing with these as well is these crazy little engines are rev really high. I think you're probably looking at 9,000 RPM. Not especially fast, but you've got a mid-engine, high revving engine, basically a baby NSX, but where you can actually enjoy all that performance. Now these cars, as I said, are not available in the UK, so if you wanted one you would have to import one from Japan, and I'm pretty sure that they've either ceased or are about to cease production on these as well. I think Ian Seabrook at Hubnut recently did a review on one of these, so you may wish to take a look at that if you're interested in these kind of cars. Also, before we leave this stand, we've got this fantastic Alfa 166. Now these are actually incredibly rare even when they were new, but even more so today. I don't know how many of these are left, but I can't imagine very many. This one's a 3-litre V6 as well, and as you're probably aware, I do love a good Busso engine. I think later on we may see Mr. Coleman, the rubbish mechanic, on one of the stands. He's here with his twin spark, I believe. But really nice, interesting piece of design from Alfa Romeo, quite understated. So now we've found the Rover 800 Owners Club stand. Again, another car I'm quite interested to see. The 800 developed along with the Honda Legend, I believe. Now this one looks to be one of the later cars, and it's one of the two-door coupes as well. Now, a friend of mine actually did have one of these. His was a 2-litre turbo in a lovely dark blue, but obviously this is in this sort of gold colour. And we've got a lovely cream leather interior in this car, and as you can imagine, lots of wood as well. Hello, voiceover Mark here. This is one of several times throughout the day where I had a few technical issues with my wireless microphone system. So here you find me at the Rover 200 and Rover 400 Owners Club stand. Now, I've actually been on their Facebook group for a while now, and as an enthusiast, unfortunately, rather than as an owner. But they're a really friendly bunch, and I did actually have a chat with a few of the guys on this stand off camera a little bit later on as well. I'm quite nostalgic for these cars because my grandfather had a couple of high-spec Rover R8s. This particular vehicle that we're looking at here is one of the later Rover R8s. Towards the end, Rover did the 214 SEI, so there was all the 1.4 litre K-Series engine. The SEI would have been a fairly mid-spec car, but it gained a lot of nice things like colour-coded bumpers, alloy wheels as seen on the GSI models, and the half-leather interior. For the 1980s, the Metro was the car to take on the world. Here we have a very early MG version of the Metro, this one now rapidly approaching 40 years of age. And that's not the only car on the stand, we've got a much later MG Metro here as well, we've got another one back there, and we've even got an MG Maestro on the stand as well. Now again, the Maestro, another one of those cars I really didn't care much for, but in hindsight now, I think it really was sort of the blueprint for that genre of car that we, for that size of car. Obviously we've gone from more of a saloon or fastback to a hatchback, so these cars are actually said to be quite spacious in the back. There was also one of the early adopters of colour-coded bumpers as well, which again we take for granted these days, but back in the 1980s, really quite a rarity to see that on a mainstream production car. In the 1980s, just like the decade that preceded it, Austin, or Austin Rover, or Rover Group as it later became, really did have to throw everything at making the best of cars that they could with a minimal budget to do so. This early Metro here is very similar to one that we had in the family briefly in the early 1980s. Ours was a very basic spec car. This one looks to be a much higher spec with things like split rear seats, flush headlamps and an automatic gearbox. The Metro was facelifted a few times over its life, finishing up with the Rover Metro and Rover 100. Here we have another M car, the Maestro, which was the next size car up, and beyond that we had the Montego, which was the larger car. This white Montego, I've recently found out from another video, it's actually covered well over 1 million miles. History looks back quite unkindly on these cars, but they do seem to be gaining quite a following now, and perhaps for good reason. Another car that was perhaps misjudged was the Austin Allegro. It was a saloon rather than a hatchback, but in other ways it was a little more advanced with its fancy hydrogas suspension system. Allegros that were built in Italy by Innocenti. This Innocenti region is a real rarity in a car that I didn't expect to see, and this being based on an early car has the Quartec steering wheel, which may look a little odd, but I am told that from a driver's point of view they're actually quite comfortable to use. Over at the Rover P6 Club stand, we've got a couple of lovely P6s. This particular one is the 3.5 litre V8S. Now the engine bay in these cars could easily accommodate the V8 engine, as it was initially designed to take a gas turbine, which actually never made it into production, but it was certainly a very interesting concept. Obviously at the time these cars were released, we was very much in the jet age. Not all cars got the V8, this is a 2200 single carb. There was also 2 litre versions of the P6 in single and twin carb. Here we have a Rover R8, this particular model being a 216 GTI 3-door. Presumably this one was the single cam Honda D series. There was also twin cam versions of this vehicle. This one has the lattice style alloys, some had 5-spoke alloys on the 3 doors. It's also a pre-facelift without the Rover grille and still has the short front indicator lenses. Some K registrations like this had ones that wrapped around. The interior very similar to other Rover R8s, although the 3 doors got wood on the dash top, they didn't get it on the door cappings. Obviously the seats were also unique to the GTI version. This one has the small ducktail spoiler. Again, some GTIs had a slightly larger boot spoiler. Of course, these were always a quality vehicle, and we've got things like the Viking badge on the C-pillar there. Money no object though, the Rover for me would be one of these, a P5B, this particular one being a coupe version as well. So the B was for the Buick V8, so it was a 3.5 litre V8 engine. The coupe got a slightly lower roofline but was still a 4-door body style, and of course there was lots of leather,
deep pile carpets, wood cappings, basically all the luxuries you could want. There was no wonder that these were the preserve of royalty. Her Majesty the Queen herself actually had one of these vehicles, and there was also favoured as government transportation. So here we have a Rover R8 200 Series Coupe, which were known as a Tomcat. This particular car has a different shaped number plate and a leather interior, so this could be one of the famous Japanese market cars, but we could do a whole other video on those. We also have here a race spec Rover Tomcat. There was I believe a one-make racing series for these. Also, there was a couple of vehicles that were kitted out for breaking some records, and they actually did test these. I believe it was 24 hours and set a number of speed and distance records over that time. So after the R8 we had the R3, often known as the Rover 200 Bubble. This particular version here is the BRM, which used the 1.8 variable valve timed engine that was also found in the Rover 200 VI, but this had a few extras, like we got the green paint with the orange grille in the lower bumper and the red leather interior. So I'm also a big fan of Rover Sd1s. These particular cars are Series 1 early cars. They have a slightly different dashboard, the front valance, headlights, so very subtle differences between this and the Series 2. The tailgate glass as well is a slightly different shape on the Series 2 cars. So these particular ones in very period colours. Something noteworthy there, the headlamps on these Series 1s are actually recessed, and I didn't actually realise before, but they had headlamp wipers that was actually concealed at the bottom of the headlamp.
Something I haven't seen for years is the Talbot Sunbeam, and in particular here we've got the Lotus Talbot Sunbeam. Now these things were actually pretty quick. So we've got a Ferrari 355. This was definitely the car that most of us teenagers drooled over when we were younger. Obviously an evolution of the 348, but under this, even though they look very similar, other than this maybe been a bit smoothed off, having lost those side louvers, they're actually quite different in some respects underneath. So we've now got a 6-speed gearbox, and we've got 5 valves per cylinder in that V8 engine as well. And I love the 348, but I know a lot of the press did criticise them for certain things. The 355, everybody seemed to love this car when it came out, and still do to some people. Some people actually say the ones that came after really didn't top it. A lot still prefer to drive a 355. A Rover Sd1 Series 2. Looks like it may be a Vitesse model as well. We've got those cross-spoke wheels on there, that deep front bumper. Yeah, it is a Vitesse 1984. It looks like it's got the V8 as well. Really like these cars. Sadly, prices have gone up to a point where well beyond my price range, but especially the twin plenum ones go for quite a lot of money now. So the pod on top of the dash, the design has changed from the Series 1s. We've now got those auxiliary gauges in the middle of the dash. Other than that, not a lot of difference. We've still got the passenger air vent in place of where the steering column would be. So, as I mentioned earlier, there were certain things that were done in order to make it easy to convert to between left and right and drive for different markets. I've got a 1990 Toyota Celica Gt. I don't think it's a GT4, but even so, really like these in period. The MR2 was probably my choice, but these were definitely close behind, especially if you needed the rear seats. And a really nice design, quite curvy, these cars, but and the last generation to have the pop-up headlights as well. This one appears to be an automatic as well. It's a 2-litre GT. I actually had a friend who had a relative had a GT4, actually a Carlos Sainz version of these, which I imagine would be very, very popular these days. Something we've got really exciting here is a Lotus Turbo Esprit. I've long been a fan of Esprits, and this one obviously is done out as it would have been seen in For Your Eyes Only, which was the second Esprit in that film after the first one was blown up. And so we've got our Giugiaro badge there. Oh, and the good old burglar protected. So anyone who's seen the Bond film that this car featured in will see the funny side in that sticker in the window. So by this point, obviously, the rear glazing had been lost in favour of these louvers. And we've also got this ducktail, this lip on the back here. Now I know that aerodynamically there was an issue with these. It may have created downforce at the back, but sort of then created lift at the front. So to get around that, they had to design a lip into the front of these louvers, which directs airflow above that rear ducktail. And a cardboard cut out of the man himself, so Roger Moore as James Bond. Oh, a Series 1 Esprit. And probably my favourite of all the designs, the purest design of Esprit. Of course, you've got that crazy interior as well, very 70s. Obviously famous for turning into a submarine in The Spy Who Loved Me. Of course, the road-going cars didn't actually do that, but they were still incredibly cool nonetheless. This wedge shape that endured for many years, but the design did get softened slightly, especially with the Peter Stevens car that came later on. But yeah, here look, we unlike with that Turbo Esprit we saw, we haven't got the side skirts on, and that front end sort of tapers up, and we've just got this little black splitter that you'd hardly notice tucked under the bumper. Of course, James Bond didn't always drive a Lotus. For many of the films he drove an Aston Martin. But if you really want an Aston Martin that's individual, one from your local Aston Martin dealer possibly isn't going to cut it. What you might want to consider is something like this 2003 Aston Martin Zagato, based around a DB7, but with a unique body by Zagato. Coach-built cars really are a way to have something that's a little more individual. So what if you want something a little bit newer, you don't want a car from the 90s? Well, how about a Vantare? Never heard of it? Neither had I until I saw this one. Celebrity owner Bradley Walsh has one of these cars. Apparently there could be around 10 of these built. It's not actually called an Aston Martin, but underneath it is based on current generation Aston Martin, but with a completely unique body. Clearly this is inspired by Aston Martins of the 1960s, such as the DB5. Maybe something a little cheaper will be this Porsche. The 912 was the entry level into Porsches many years ago. It looks like a 911, but uses a 1600cc engine. These days though, it's hardly a cut price Porsche. This particular example would today set you back almost £48,000. One car I'd really like to have shown you is this Renault 5 Turbo 2 that's hiding back there, but it's on the Silverstone auction stand and you do have to pay extra to go on there. And with how much I've already spent getting in here today, I'm certainly not going to be bidding on anything, so we might have to give that one a miss. Here we've got the Xjs Club with a fine selection of cars on there. We've got coupe and convertible versions. And at the back there we can see one of the later cars as well. Obviously the Xjs did have a fairly lengthy production run, so obviously there were a few revisions over the years. And here we've got a TWR Xjs. Oh, that one's even got a little Jaguar in there. I do like a GT Junior, but here we've got a GTA. That's not the only thing on this Alfa stand. Got a 8C hiding over there. And the Giulia GTA. Bit modern for me, but it is an Alfa, and my teenage son certainly got excited about this when he saw it. Alfa Romeo 147. There's also an Alfa 147 GTA. By all accounts, quite a handful. You've got that fabulous Busso engine in these, but let's say it's a lot of engine for a car of this size. Another Alfa I'm quite fond of is the 156. When these cars came out, they really did add a little bit of something exciting to the segment. A segment that was quite big in the UK at the time, but generally quite bland as well. But they certainly would have looked quite good in the works car park against all the Vectras and Mondeos and other company cars of the time. And here we find ourselves at the Ferrari Owners Club, where we've got this Ferrari 550 Barchetta, and if you look at how low that windscreen is, you see the hoops are actually quite a bit higher on the back, the rollover hoops. Now, hiding behind that, a car I never tire of seeing. I've actually saw a few of these at Festival Italia this year, and that is the F40. Now, anyone of my generation, remember when these came out in the late 1980s, you had the 959 Porsche, which could just about nudge 199 miles per hour. The F40 was the car for the road that took us over 200 miles per hour. Now, as if being the first road car to do 200 miles an hour wasn't enough, it's also constructed of carbon fibre. A long way from the luxury of something like a Bugatti Veyron now. These were very stripped out, very raw, with a turbocharged V8 of quite a modest capacity as well. Acceleration, I think 60 was around 3 seconds, which was unheard of for the 1980s. 355 Challenge. Again, a lot of love for the 355, and obviously this one fully race prepared. Now, we saw that replica earlier of the GT40, and now we've got a stand full of cars here. Actually got one around it in the Gulf livery as well. I do like a Gulf liveried car. It's absolutely fantastic. It's not just the older models that are here as well.
Dad, can I take a picture?
They're a H, so it's around a 91, I believe. Ferrari 348 GTS. Obviously, it looks a bit like that 355, apart from slight differences in body styling, namely those louvers, the different alloy wheels, and the louvers across the back. Obviously, this car taking some styling cues from the Testarossa. Obviously, the GTSs and TSs had this removable Targa roof panel as well. And here we've got a car I've always wanted to see and never seen one in the metal, Lamborghini Miura. regarded by many as the first ever supercar. It's the Transverse V12 engine with a gearboxing sump, as inspired by the beloved Mini. The only problem with that is if you grate the gears, you will need to change your engine oil. A fantastic car. There were some issues, like early cars had quite thin chassis on them. I believe they were prone to twisting. They also suffered a bit of lift, I think, at around 80 miles per hour at the front end. And the cabins are incredibly hot, but still an incredible car. And probably the one car I've really wanted to see above all others. And it's taken me all these years to finally see one. So it's nice to see Mr. James Coleman once again.
Yes, and you too, mate. Nice to see you.
The Rubbish Mechanic is James's channel, which you may have already seen. And today you've got this.
Yes, I got my 166 here today. Yeah, my 166 2-litre twin spark. It's just had a nice fresh coat of paint in certain areas, should we say, to get it up to scratch. And yeah, it's nice to have a 166 on stand, and with them being less than 100 left, it's pulling quite the crowds.
Yeah, I was just saying earlier we saw a 3-litre one in one of the other halls, and I was saying that even in period these weren't a common car, were they?
No, they weren't. No, the Alfa Romeo brought, I think, 1,100 over of 166 in 11 years.
You did actually have a Busso engine one,
I did have a 3-litre one, yeah. That decided to get old very quick, and because I use my 166 daily, it was a case of, do I spend a fortune on it and for it to last another year, or do I break it and pull its heart out, which is worth the money, and buy this one, which I knew was half decent, so I ended up buying this one.
Yeah. And people often forget the twin spark's quite a good engine in itself anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you find it from behind the wheel by comparison?
It's a lot more drivable than a V6 one, because the engine's a lot more revvable, it's a lot more control, it's not just all-out power like a Busso is, whereas this one, it's a lot more gradual. It's still a very powerful engine, but it's a lot more gradual, it's a lot more drivable, and the beauty with the twin spark engine, it's manual, it's not automatic.
Right. Presume it's probably a bit lighter on the front end as well.
It is. It's a lot lighter on the front end, but the 2-litre twin sparks have got slightly different springs on the front, so they still behave like a 3-litre. They still behave like a Busso engine one, and they handle absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, excellent. And the twin sparks, I believe that second spark is near the outer edge of the cylinder, isn't it?
It's on the outer edge of the cylinder. Your normal spark plug, which is in the centre, which is surrounded by the 4 valves, fires at top dead centre.
Yep.
And the little spark plug fires at 12 degrees after top dead centre. So it creates a swirl effect in the combustion chamber.
And does that come into effect more at higher engine speeds?
No, it's all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So it gives you a nice linear torque curve then?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So you've just bought the 70 fat Alpha 90,
Alpha 90.
That's currently
having an engine
rebuild. The Granada's away for the winter.
The Granada's away for the winter, and I've just recently acquired a Lancia Capo 2-litre 20 valve, just to replace the 90 whilst the 90's, because the 90's not going to be finished overnight. It's going to be quite a long project. So I bought a Lancia Capo left-hand drive. It's a UK car, but left-hand drive, to slowly recommission over the winter and sell it. It needs a few bits and bobs doing to it, but you know, you'll find all the videos of that on my channel, and if anybody wants to buy it when it's done, please get in contact, because it'll be cheap.
Yeah, so Lancia Capo, if you don't know what one of them is, you're probably not alone. Again, it's not a common car, but if you check out the Rubbish Mechanic, and as I say, you'll be able to see the Kappa and the other vehicles on that channel as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. Nice talking to you
problem.
again.
You too.
Next time on Mark on Motoring, Porsche Boxster. Has it really been 25 years already? Plus we also take a look at some other old Porsches and other German cars. The Bugatti Veyron, a classic from the day it was conceived. I talk with an engineer with clean hands. And the Renault 4 turned 60. Small French hatchbacks coming of age. Some are sensible.
some will never be sensible. And a lot more to come besides. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.